Hello everyone, welcome to a new chess video. Today, you're about to discover the Liar's Gambit, a gambit I recently found that blew my mind. I've studied it thoroughly so I can share it with all of you, and so you can enjoy it as much as I do. And not only that, but so you can start winning tons of games thanks to it. Also, it's a gambit that comes after the moves d4 and d5, which are very popular moves as you already know. So you'll be able to play it in tons and tons of games. That's why I like it so much, because of that and because of how spectacular it is. By the way, let's do a challenge and see if you like this video. Since I'm making this video for you for free, how about you leave me a nice like? And let's see if we can reach 500 likes. That might seem like very little to you, because you're used to watching really big YouTubers, but I prefer to have a small audience, as long as you guys are the best. So, if you leave me a good like before we get started, I'll honestly be grateful to you forever. Alright, now let's get started with this awesome gambit. I'm starting with the move we've already seen on the channel, the move e4. We've seen this in a few other gambits before. However, this won't be the same as always. This is going to be a really new gambit. Why are you giving away such an important pawn on the second move, chess teacher? Yeah, I mean, we've always been taught not to give away material, especially not a central pawn. Well, that's exactly what's great about a gambit. A gambit means we sacrifice material in exchange for getting way more attacking chances than our opponent. So, when they capture this pawn, how should we respond? We should respond by attacking it with this knight. Notice something here. If your opponent gets careless and plays a move that doesn't defend this pawn, we simply recapture it. And look, we've already gotten our material back. However, the most common thing is that they defend this pawn. And if I ask you, let's see, a normal developing move to defend this pawn, the usual thing is that you tell me, for example, right, knight to f6. That seems like a completely normal move to me. It would also be very normal, and I'm sure some of you thought of this, bishop to f5. And I also think that's a perfectly good move, okay? Knight to f6 is used much more often. So let's start with this one here. What we're going to do is basically play as if it were a Spanish opening, but reversed. If you don't know what the Spanish opening is, don't worry. It's this move here, but reversed. We do it on the other side. Why is this move so interesting? Well, we're attacking this pawn that's defended by a knight. So if this knight is the one defending, we're going to attack this knight. So what should black's pieces do? Well, they should defend this pawn again. Why? Because if it were our turn again, we would capture this knight, and when they recapture, then we could recapture this pawn because its defender will no longer be there. That's why it's so important that when we play this bishop here, they defend this pawn again with this move here. I say with this move here because notice there is no other move, no other way to defend it. With the queen, it wouldn't be possible because we have the knight. So bishop to f5, the only possible move. And now, how are we going to continue? Well, you probably won't expect this move because it's a bit unusual, but it's a star move in the gambit. We're going to place the queen on e2. The main reason we're doing this? To keep attacking this point. We're attacking with the knight, and we're attacking with the queen. It looks like we're attacking with 2, and they're defending with 2, but really, they're only defending with 1, because we can take out this knight whenever we want. Now, I'm sure all of you are thinking, come on, chess teacher, you're going crazy. Now, there's a really easy way to defend this pawn. By capturing this pawn you just hung when you move the queen. See how easy that is? I take this pawn, and on top of that, I defend this pawn with 3 pieces. So what happened here, chess teacher? Have you lost your mind? And what do I always tell you? Obviously, I go crazy. But that's because this works. Now, by bringing the queen over to capture this pawn, we're simply going to come here to give this check and attack the bishop. A double attack. Notice one thing. When we play queen to e2, our goal was never to capture this spot here, which is what everyone thinks. Our goal is to come through here. That's why when they capture this pawn, which they'll do in 90% of cases, they've lost the game after this spectacular move. Check, and we take the bishop. However, a lot of you are probably thinking, come on, chess teacher, now you really are losing your mind. Because if it's check and I attack the bishop, I can just defend it with my own bishop. But here, you're missing the fact that we're also attacking this spot right here. We take this pawn, and now friends, both guys and girls, we're attacking this rook, which seems really hard to defend. They can't bring the queen here defended by the knight because our knight is there, but they do have this move right here, right? You might say, chess teacher, here they're defending everything. Well, here we could sneak in through here and pretty much deliver checkmate. What's going on? It's that they have this queen that can come back to block. So this move wouldn't be as good as it seems. What should we do, chess teacher? If I can't take the rook and I can't go in for checkmate, don't worry, because this queen, no matter how much they attack her, isn't going to move from here since we have the brilliant bishop pin. Notice that now this bishop can't capture the queen because it's pinned to its own king. So the only move that saves the bishop is to bring the queen over to block, right? They block with the queen, they block the bishop, and this is where they want us to trade queens. Why? Because they have an extra pawn. However, now that the queen is no longer here, we can sneak in and deliver this checkmate where the king can't escape from here. We will start by playing d4. This is the move you should start with to play the gambit, and almost always they reply with d5. If not, well, we can try to do it a little later, but the trap itself works with d4, d5, okay? We'll play e4, giving up a super important pawn, and now we're going to attack it with the knight. You need to remember this. You already know it's really easy to remember these traps because, as you can see, you can watch the videos as many times as you need. So if you forget, just watch it again, and that's it. Super easy. Just save the video and you're good. We attacked this pawn, and they defended either with the knight or with the bishop. It's fine, because now we're going to attack the knight, and they're going to defend it with the bishop. They have to do this. Why am I going through this so quickly? Because if they don't do this, we would just get the material back right away. That's why it's most common for them to defend that pawn, so they don't lose material. Star move here. Do you remember it or not? Queen to e2. Queen to e2, mainly to attack this pawn and get the material back. No, that's what they think. But no, our main goal is even if we give up another pawn, we want to come here to give a check, attack the bishop, and take this pawn over here. Obviously, their only option is to bring the bishop over, because any other move, like blocking the check, we would just take the bishop, and that would be way too much material advantage, right? So we calculate coming here directly. When we capture this pawn, which we should capture, okay, it's the only move that gives us the advantage, to capture this pawn when they defend with the bishop. So notice that there's no other way but to bring the bishop here, because if they come, for example, with the knight, we would just take the rook. That's why all of these are forced moves. What do forced moves mean? Studying forced moves means those moves that the opponent has to make, no matter what. That's why these gambits are so effective, because we already know exactly which moves our opponent must make, right? Now, when they play bishop to c6, what were we going to do? Pin this bishop with the move bishop to b5. And now we've seen that this move was a disaster, because we could sneak in and deliver checkmate. But there are other moves, like for example queen to d7, defending against mate. So first, we exchange this bishop here, important, and now they have two possible moves. If they capture with the queen, it's check major. Look at these attacks. If they capture with a knight, we take the rook. So they can't capture with either the queen or the knight, and if they don't capture this bishop, they'd simply be losing the queen because of the pin. What does this mean? That queen to d7 is a move, actually more like a disastrous move. Queen to b6 would be checkmate, and queen to d7 is also a disaster because of bishop takes bishop. So what other options do black's pieces have? Of course, you might say to me, if I move the queen, I lose. It doesn't matter where I move it. So look, I'll just let you take this rook, and I'll capture this bishop. At least I only lose the exchange. I have an extra pawn. Nothing really happens. But actually here, we're not going to capture the rook. Instead, we're going to recapture this bishop with the knight. Very important. Remember this, okay? If I come here with the bishop and they capture my bishop, I recapture with the knight. And now the threat is huge. They can't do anything. I'm attacking the queen, and not only that, I'm also attacking this square here, and not only that, I'm attacking the rook as well. And many of you will say, well, there's a move that seems to defend almost everything, which is this one. Well, this defends the rook, but we always have this move here, check, and we take the queen. And not only that, but we have a brutal checkmate. And what would that checkmate look like? We simply come here to give check, they have to block with the queen, and then we jump in with the knight to give check. Neither the knight nor the queen can be captured. The knight can't be captured because the queen is pinned, and the queen can't be captured because it's the knight giving check. Incredible, right? Okay, this is very important. When they capture this central pawn, we play the knight, they play the knight, we come in to attack, and now, super important, we play queen to e2. What happens if they don't capture this pawn, chess teacher? Because you're basing the whole video on them capturing that pawn. But, well, it's very likely that they won't capture it because they've seen this check here. Well, that's right, it's very likely, and it can happen. For example, they might play e6, directly defending this bishop. It's true, that's a much better move. However, I'm also going to show you how to punish that. By the way, I've sometimes gotten comments saying the following. These videos don't work because if they play perfectly, they beat us. Look, this is very important, okay? Whenever they play perfectly against us, they're always going to win. Always, okay? Only machines are capable of playing perfectly. So these videos are meant to teach you how to punish your opponent's mistakes. If your opponent makes this mistake, you'll know how to punish it, and it can also help you avoid making the same mistakes yourself. So these videos are actually much more useful than you might think. I've won a whole lot of chess tournaments throughout my life, and I promise you that learning this really helps, okay? So now, let's get back to what's important. What happens if they realize that we played queen to e2 to come here and not to recapture the pawn? And they played, for example, e6, right? Well, that's fine. First of all, let me tell you that now, since we've protected this and didn't come over here, you can always recover the material whenever you want. For example, by bishop takes knight, and when they recapture, we take this pawn. Why? Because now, as you know, we have two pieces attacking and only one defending. We can get rid of this knight whenever we want. Perfect. Besides that, I actually think there are much better moves than just capturing this knight. And I'm going to show you which ones I think are better. We'll start with castling long. Look, a castle where the rook is already placed on the same file as the queen. A super powerful file. So now, seeing that they're left, for example, in this kind of pin that's so aggressive against their knight, right? Notice that this knight will never be able to move because of the queen. The queen is also around here. Well, a very logical move, right? It's to develop this bishop to e7. Notice that it blocks the pin and doesn't really have any better square, because here it doesn't attack anything either, right? There's no pin or eve. Bishop to e7 is by far the most commonly played move. So what could you do here? Could you do the same thing again, capture this knight, and then capture this pawn? Without a doubt, whenever you find yourself lost in this gambit, you can recover the pawn and end up with the same material as at the start, plus a good attack. However, as I said, there are much better moves. In this case, we're going to continue with the gambit line. We're going to play fret 3. Now black is going to be rubbing their hands together. Why? Because they were thinking, man, at the beginning I won an extra pawn. It all seems so simple, but they can take it back whenever they want. And when we play f3, they've seen the light because they can exchange this pawn, get rid of the extra pawn they had, and simply, when we recapture it, well, we've just traded pawns, and black ends up with an extra pawn. So how are we going to recover this by? Well, with the knight. We want to develop our knight in exchange for losing this pawn, which is a gambit. We give up a pawn in exchange for having a lot more initiative and a much stronger attack. Black is ready to castle, for example, but it's already too late, because we have a really well-managed attack. Look, don't just memorize the moves, it's better to remember the attack plan. Right now, what's the attack plan? Well, we have a spectacular attack against the opponent's castled king. For example, with these two pawns. I'm telling you, when you launch the attack, you won't even notice you're down a pawn, because it's impossible, alright? How is our attack going to start in this case? With knight to e5, a super strong move. What am I aiming for with knight to e5? I'm not trying to threaten anything, because as you can see, it doesn't threaten anything. The idea is to place a knight in an excellent position so we can advance our pawns while they're supported and launch a truly spectacular attack on the king. Plus, there's no pawn that can threaten this knight. They can only threaten it with the other knight, but we don't care. Whatever they do, we play this move here, a super powerful move that attacks the bishop. You might say, wait, can they trade off this knight? No. That's a mistake, a really serious mistake, because when you recapture, you unleash a discovered attack on the queen. You attack the knight, you attack the bishop, and they're going to lose a ton of material here. So right now, they wouldn't be able to recapture your knight. Alright, if not, sorry. If they can't recapture the knight, how should they continue? Well, obviously by moving this bishop away. They have no other choice. And once they move this bishop, we're going to come in with this other pawn. Look at what a brutal attack we're launching on the queen side. We're mounting a fierce attack on the castle's position, and not just on the castling itself. Now, if they get careless and make any random move, like this one for example, we would simply win the bishop because they can't go anywhere. Notice that here we also have the knight and the queen. So here there's only one move that works, which is this one right here. It leaves a space open for the bishop. And not only that, but it also attacks our bishop. But this is already a serious mistake. Why? Because they're weakening themselves too much. How could things continue? Well, we would simply capture this bishop here with the knight, forcing them to recapture this knight because we're also attacking the rook. So when they recapture, notice the weakness that's been created here. This pawn has moved, we can come into check with the queen, and this would already be terrifying for the black pieces. Notice that now they can't capture here, because with that check, they'd have to move the king. And when they move the king, notice that we have such a strong attack with all our pieces coordinated. That's what's important. And that's why we gave up the pawn, to have a much stronger attack. And look, right now, do you even care about being a pawn down? First of all, we've already gotten it back. And second, look at our bishops, our queen, our pawns, our rooks. We're completely winning. Here, the black pieces can't do absolutely anything. Look, there was a game. If you want, I'll show you how to punish it quickly, where they played this move here to try to save themselves. I checked if there was any game with exactly these moves, and yes, there was one. For example, in this one, they tried to defend with this move. They simply pushed this pawn. Why? Because if they capture the bishop, it would simply be checkmate right here. So this bishop is completely untouchable. It's a bishop that can't be captured. In this case, they brought the knight here to try to defend and attack the queen, but notice that this is absolutely useless. The attack is totally lethal. No matter how much they try to attack our queen, we have much better moves. In this case, for example, what would it be? Capturing this pawn here with our pawn, thus giving a check to the king. They can't capture because it would be checkmate shortly after. So they have to move the king instead. And then the sacrifice simply came here. We sacrifice even more pieces. No matter how much they capture, we can bring in the rook, and this would already be checkmate. Look at what a brutal way this is to punish the enemy king. And now, I'll go over two typical mistakes that black makes when we play this gambit. I'll go over them quickly because they're very easy to punish. And also, after these two mistakes, I'll quickly show you a very similar track to this one, but with the black pieces, which you can also use, right? So first of all, when they capture here and we come here, you already know we should come in with the bishop. Now, we've seen that this was a mistake, right? So what about playing knight to c6? A normal developing move, saying, well, I'm not going to defend this pawn because I know you'll take it back whenever you want. Chess teacher, can I now capture this knight like you've told me several times in this video, and when they recapture, take this pawn? Of course, I've already told you one thing. Whenever you say, oh, I don't know how to continue, you can get your pawn back by capturing this knight and then taking here. And on top of that, you have a dead center. However, there are better options, alright? For example, if they played knight to c6, a better option is to play d5, putting strong pressure on this knight. Notice that when it moves here, for example, we can bring the queen, attacking the knight, and attacking the pawn with two pieces. There won't even be a need to capture this knight, and we'll have a much better position. For example, later, by castling long, if they come this way, we castle long, we put on tremendous pressure, and our position is much better than our opponent's. Simply with just one pawn down. And not only that, but we can recover the pawn whenever we want. And on top of that, we'll have equal material and a much stronger attack. And a very common mistake when we play this gambit. Before all this, take a look, okay? Here, we've attacked the pawn, they defend it with the knight, but not before all this, but right at the start. Attacking the pawn, they defend it with another pawn. At first glance, it already looks like a bad move, but you should know, you should know how to punish it, okay? A very valid option is to apply the principles I've explained to you, playing f3, capturing here, and developing the knight. We would have a much better position with this black pawn here, which is really out of place. But there's an option I love, and that has helped me win a lot of games. Placing this bishop here, tempting our opponent to threaten it. And it looks like they've got it well trapped, right? So here, they've already lost the game after the move queen to h5 check. And notice how the king is extremely weakened along this diagonal. Now, since they've moved this pawn, they can't defend with this pawn, which would have been an easy way to protect themselves. With this pawn here, they're forced to move the king over this way. Look at how ugly this position is. There's no way to escape from here. For example, we can continue with bishop to c4, putting pressure along this diagonal. In fact, they can never take this bishop, because then we would capture their rook. So this would be completely won for us. And now, to finish on a high note, I'm going to show you how to use a little trap with the black pieces, which is very similar to the trap we just did with the white pieces. You're gonna love it. Let's go. And now we've reached the final trap with the black pieces, which is very similar, and I'm sure you've seen it at some point. It's when they play d4 against you. We're gonna play e5 right away, giving up the pawn. And when they capture it, we'll attack it with a knight. Notice that here they have two options to defend it, with the knight and with the bishop, just like what we've seen with the black pieces. By the way, before I forget, please, if you've made it to the end of the video, remember that I put a lot of effort into these videos. Leave a big like, and any supportive comment is really appreciated, honestly. Because you only see the final result, you sit down and see it looking perfect, but there's a lot of work behind it, okay? Thank you all so much. Here, they can defend the pawn with two options, knight to f3 or even bishop to f4. It doesn't matter to us, whatever they do, because if they play knight to f3, for example, first, now we'll attack with the queen, and notice that the only option now is with the other piece. So the order doesn't matter, and here we've already won the game with the same move. We come here not because we wanted to get the pawn back, but because we wanted to give this check, win this bishop, and capture over here. A very similar trap with the black pieces. What do you think? Did you like it? Remember, if you love this video and you like the channel, you have both this channel and a digital channel available. You already know that we have two channels with daily videos. You can subscribe to the one you like best, or to both if you really enjoy them, okay? And you'll get a daily video on both this channel and the digital channel, Chess Teacher and Chess Teacher Digital. I hope you loved this video. I really enjoyed making it, and I'll see you in the next video, friends. Goodbye.